Yo, 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 what up, y'all? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another live stream. So before we get started, you already know what to do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice. Smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and let's get it cracking, all right? So shout out to everybody that's in the room. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. If you guys can, please give me a thumbs up or a radiation emoji in the chat. If you guys cannot hear me, then please give me a thumbs down or angry face. Or, you know, if it sounds bad or the visual presentation is not up to par, give me that thumbs down. Give me that angry face. Let me know. Shout out to DeAndre. Hopefully we'll have like enforcers on this channel very soon. Hopefully by the end of this month. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to shout out everybody that's in the building early. All right, we got Jesse in the house. Shout out to you, Jesse. We got Black Spider in the building. We got Lloyd Sky 9. We got Sybil. We got David Brown, we got John Guillory, and we got Jerry, and of course we got DeAndre. Shout out to y'all, all right? So we're going to talk about some interesting things, right? So this is titled Proof That MOTOWN Was Never Yo Town and Soon to Be My Town, all right? We're going to see why, all right? But first, question for you guys. What do you all think is the most cited reason for quote-unquote migration? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. The most quoted reason for migration. What do you guys think that it is? What do you guys think that it is? Give me your best guess. Give me your best guess. And it's important. It's important that we talk about this. And the reason why it's important that we talk about this is because we need to really understand what the legal reasons, the acceptable reasons of quote unquote migration / quote unquote immigration are. All right. Asylum seeking, right? Shout out to Leonard. What's good with it, bro? One of the major things that people were talking about when this migrant crisis first started was asylum seeking. You guys remember when everybody was saying these people are seeking asylum, and these people seeking asylum are illegally crossing the southern border of the United States to seek the asylum? Do you guys remember when people were saying that? If you guys remember that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't remember that, then give me a thumbs down. Now, here's the problem, right? You don't hear them being referred to as asylum seekers anymore, do you? Why not? If you ask me, one of the reasons why is because the reasons that most of these people are giving when they're being interviewed are not reasons that would validate an asylum seeking case. Okay? So remember, what does that bring us back to? That brings us back to the question, what's the number one reason for people migrating? You guys can see it right there on the top of the screen. Economic opportunity cited as top reason for migration. All right. So now if economic reasons are the reasons cited for migration, is that valid for asylum seeking? If that's valid for asylum seeking, give me a thumbs up. If it's not, then give me a thumbs down.
The current dysfunction in Washington is stemming directly from the often chaotic scenes at our southern border. Border Patrol agents encountering tens of thousands of people crossing into the U.S. on a monthly basis. And a memo exclusively obtained by News Nation indicates most are not arriving strictly for asylum. Correspondent Allie Bradley joins us live in Arizona. Allie, with details on what is inside those internal documents.
They're not. Most of them aren't coming for asylum. So they can't use that language anymore. They can't sit there and say that these people are seeking asylum. Big facts. Shout out to AB for being a like enforcer. Shout out to Lloyd Sky 9. Biggest facts. If you guys agree with Lloyd Sky 9, the actual reason is obviously the access to the US dollar. Give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree and think it's something else, then give me a thumbs down.
Change by News Nation indicates most are not arriving strictly for asylum. Correspondent Allie Bradley joining us live in Arizona. Allie, with details on what is inside those internal documents.
Yeah, hey, Nicole, we were able to exclusively obtain these internal memos here showing that Customs and Border Protection advisors linked up with Panamanian immigration officials down in the Darien Gap actually know that many of these migrants don't qualify for asylum all the way down south, yet they allow them to traverse all the way to our southern border and enter into those asylum proceedings anyway.
So did you hear what she said? We're going to run it back.
Of these migrants don't qualify for asylum.
One more time.
Protection advisors linked up with Panamanian immigration officials down in the Darien Gap actually know that many of these migrants don't qualify for asylum all the way down south, yet they allow them.
So now here's my question. Why is it that our own government here in the United States is telling us that these people are seeking asylum if when they get to the countries that are down, further south in South and Central America, they're not qualifying for seeking asylum there? But they're telling us that these people are here for asylum seeking. Does that make any sense? Make that make sense. And yeah, I agree. Shout out to Lloyd Sky 9. Lloyd Sky 9 says people don't understand the leverage our dollar has abroad. I wish I have known that now. I wish I'd known now what I knew when I was 19. Yeah, facts. Facts. And shout out to DeAndre. DeAndre says changing the tune, huh? Fact. Yeah. Yeah. So now, here's the question, right? If these people don't qualify for asylum and they're not really seeking asylum, why is the United States making such a big effort to let them in? Make that make sense.
Them to traverse all the way to our southern border and enter into those asylum proceedings anyway. So hundreds of migrants were actually questioned down in the Darien Gap, and officials were conducting this survey to figure out really what the pull factors are, why these individuals are coming to our southern border and why they're making this really dangerous journey. So they questioned hundreds of migrants from South and Central America. This is notoriously, the Darien Gap is known for being the most dangerous region that connects South and Central America. Now, investigators, they found no reports of gangs or other criminal organizations pushing migrants out of their countries, aside from one case. Now, none of the interviewed migrants actually claimed political persecution as a reasoning for leaving either. And now this is pretty significant here because this current Senate bill.
So now, do you guys remember a couple streams back when I said none of these people, when interviewed, are giving answers that qualify them for asylum? None of them are giving those. So why are we continuing to act like these people are seeking asylum? Do you guys remember that? I literally actually said this a couple streams ago. If you guys recall that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't, give me a thumbs down. We asked that question.
That we're talking about right now would label all migrants as asylum seekers, despite knowing that most migrants are fleeing from poor economic conditions, not political persecution. In fact, many of those interviewed say that they already have employment set up for them at their final destinations here in the United States.
Which is why they want to go where they want to go. That's why they want to go where they want to go. They already have a value chain in place. Now, think about this. Here's the question, right? How do you already have employment set up where you're going, but then you act like you don't know why you're going there or how you get there? These people know exactly what they're doing. This is a logistics move. Right, right, DeAndre. DeAndre says, so they down there at the border conducting polls instead of keeping these people from crossing the border. Facts. And shout out to Win Loser Rug. Win Loser Rug said, not one African country on this list. Facts. Not one list. Now, again, make this make sense. Make any of what we just heard make sense. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna run it back again because these are the questions that we've been asking since the beginning, right? And when you go and when you go on and watch ABC or when you watch NBC, they're not saying any of this. They don't even have anybody asking these questions.
To figure out really what the pull factors are, why these individuals are coming to our southern border and why they're making this really dangerous journey. So they questioned hundreds of migrants from South and Central America. This is notoriously, the Darien Gap is known for being the most dangerous region that connects South and Central America. Now, investigators, they found no reports of gangs or other criminal organizations pushing migrants out of their countries, aside from one case. Now, none of the interviewed migrants actually claimed political persecution as their reasoning for leaving either. And now this is pretty significant here because this current Senate bill that we're talking about right now would label all migrants as asylum seekers, despite knowing that most migrants are fleeing from poor economic conditions, not political persecution. In fact, many of those interviewed say that they already have employment set up for them at their final destinations here in the United States. So here's a breakdown of the migrants that were interviewed.
So here go the question, y'all. How do they have employment set up for them at their destination in the United States? How do they have it set up? How do you already have employment established in the United States? How? Make it make sense. Which also reinforces the fact that you're not an asylum seeker. That reinforces the fact that what you're really doing is you're moving, right? You're moving to a different country, and you found a loophole through our immigration and asylum system to be able to get the move all expense paid for. Would you guys agree? If you guys agree, give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree, give me a thumbs down. And real quick, shout out to everybody that's watching. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. If you all haven't smashed the like button, please take a moment, smash that like button. Also, if you guys haven't hit the bell, take a moment, make sure that you guys hit that bell.
Of them did come from Venezuela. The majority say they began their journeys from their home country. However, a number of Venezuelan nationals were actually living in Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia for 6 months or more, even more than several years before even heading north. They say they left those countries because of deteriorating economic conditions and fear of being targeted by gangs. Ironically, many migrants reported being victims to robberies, assaults, and rape in the middle of the Darien Gap. Now, the report indicates most migrants are headed to metropolitan areas in several states.
So now, did you hear that? On the way up, they're the victims of crimes. It's going down inside that Darien Gap. They getting raped and they getting robbed in the gap.
And rape in the middle of the Darien Gap. Now, the report indicates most migrants are headed to metropolitan areas in several states across the U.S. Almost all of the interviewed Venezuelan nationals were aware of these repatriation flights that DHS is conducting, but they say that the possible long-term benefits of making the trek to the United States outweighs the risk of possibly being returned to Venezuela. Now, we were able to talk in a one-on-one with independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. down at the border, who was making his second trip down here. This time he was in Tucson sector, which is where we're standing right now. And this is the hardest hit sector. And he says if he wins, he would stop all illegal crossings, including those coming through the Darien Gap.
I would make an announcement on day one that it's over. And I would then begin enforcing the law so nobody gets across. And I would also start talking to the presidents of the Central American countries.
Man, I'm telling you, Robert F. Kennedy, he'll say anything to get anybody's vote. Like, whatever, anytime there's an issue, whatever people's popular opinion is on the issue, he'll say that that's what he'll do in order to get the vote. Like, anywhere where there's some issue at, here come Robert F. Kennedy talking about he gonna do something, when literally all this guy does is just pander to everybody. Would you guys agree? Yeah, here he comes showing up. Shout out to DC Precise. Here go Robert F. Kennedy at the border with his nonsense. DeAndre said leather throat. Oh, man. Tough crowd today.
Ecuador, Colombia, and enlist their help in solving this problem internationally.
Now, Nicole, I asked the president of the Border Patrol Union why repatriation flights weren't happening down in the Darien Gap or down in one of these facilities in Guatemala or Honduras that DHS is operating. He said they could be running those repatriation flights, but it comes down to politics. Nicole.
All right. Allie Bradley live for us there in Arizona. Thank you. Thank you for.
All right. So there's that. All right. So now I can't remember who put this in the Discord, and my apologies. I think it was DeAndre. It was either DeAndre or Lehman Lucas, and watch it not be either one. But hundreds of refugees and migrants have arrived in Detroit in recent weeks. Are we ready to shelter more? What do y'all think about that? He sound like he going through it, don't he, DSB? He sound like he going through it like crazy. Hundreds of refugees and migrants have arrived in Detroit in recent weeks. Are we ready to shelter more? With service providers stretched thin, families opened their homes for new arrivals, and the city added beds for newcomers and unhoused Detroiters. All right. So now this is an article from January 24th. Detroit had already been struggling to provide adequate shelter for more than 8,500 homeless residents. Shout out to the Box Bros when the weather turned frigid. The newcomers from across the world arrived in a town as many as 1,000 people though estimates vary widely. Many of the recent arrivals came on their own and went directly to live with friends or relatives. So that goes back to what they were saying on News Nation about how they have a predetermined destination before they even get to the United States. They have a predetermined destination before they even get to the United States. There's no official tally of recent arrivals. Now, why do you guys think that is? Local immigrant communities led the response to the asylum seekers. So they're calling them asylum seekers in this article here, but we know the truth about the whole asylum seeking thing. Right? We know the truth about the whole asylum seeking thing by welcoming hundreds of newcomers into their homes, advocates say. They are already tired. They are already low on resources, but they are not going to let their people die on the street, said Sidi Sar, who is the founder of a Detroit-based nonprofit ABISA, also known as the African Bureau for Immigration and Social Affairs, who has worked to coordinate housing for the immigrants. Okay, so now, I mean, you know, if Detroit is passing this early test of its hospitality amid rising global migration, it is doing so with the narrowest margin of error. The city paid to open additional beds for unhoused locals and new refugees and migrants, tapping vacant facilities recently acquired by a homelessness service nonprofit. Detroiters organized among themselves to provide warm clothes and food for the asylum seekers, some of whom hadn't seen snow before. Now, remember, though, a lot of them, they have their destination already established. They have a pre-established destination already. You know what I'm saying? Despite occasional dire predictions, these efforts have continued to successfully prevent Detroit from experiencing tent cities popping up, as has been seen in other communities, said David Bowser, chief of housing solutions and support services for the city of Detroit in an email. But any extra slack in the city shelter system, which homeless Detroiters have long viewed as crowded and inaccessible, is now taken up. So as you guys can see, there's no more room in the system that Detroit has to be able to house people. Okay. Migration to the U.S. is only expected to grow. Now, mind you, this was in January they said this, which means that they still think that the migration is going to grow. Meanwhile, there are few signs of the regional cooperation experts say is essential to sustainably welcoming migrants. If I call the city right now and say I have 100 people who need the housing, the shelters don't have it, Sar said. So now how is that going to work? So as you guys can see, as this shelter starts in Detroit, Detroit is already jammed up. They already don't have enough room, and they just started this. They just started it. They just started it, and they already jammed up. And I do have more than 100 people who I know are in a precarious housing situation. So now here's what it says, what's happening. Observers estimate that somewhere between 500 and 1,000 refugees and migrants arrived in the Detroit area in the days after Christmas. City spokesperson John Roach told Outlier Media that the city opened more shelter beds for Afghan refugees who arrived in 2021 and 2022 than they did for recent arrivals. Yet, everyone Outlier spoke to said this year's numbers are higher than in the past. It's not clear why the newcomers arrived when they did. Elizabeth Orozo Vasquez, CEO of Freedom House Detroit, a nonprofit that serves people who come to the city seeking humanitarian protection, said she views their arrivals as overflow from the larger U.S. cities such as New York and Chicago. Both cities have struggled to house tens of thousands of new refugees and migrants in recent months, and both are on the growing list of local governments buying plane or bus tickets for people willing to go anywhere else. Now, here goes my question. Do you guys ever wonder why it is that there's not very much media coverage on what Texas does with all of the migrants that cross into Texas? Because they don't just bus and fly all of them all over the place. So now here goes my question. Where's the coverage on what goes on with the migrants that are down in Texas? What do you guys think? That make any sense? What do you guys think? What's up with the coverage on what happens to the migrants in Texas? So now here it says roughly half of the new arrivals are Spanish speakers from the Americas, primarily Venezuela, observers said. The remainder are French speakers from West Africa, including Senegal, Mali, and Republic of Congo. Okay. Freedom House is currently providing legal aid, medical care, clothing, and a range of other services to around 200 people, Orozo Vasquez said. School officials have already begun to work with families to get kids enrolled. Freedom House normally hosts around 56 people in its main building, but that number is now up to 89 after it set up additional cots in hallways and a common area. Another 138 people registered with Freedom House are living at shelters operated by Detroit Rescue Mission Ministries, one of the city's largest homeless service nonprofits. Chad Audie, president and CEO of DRMM, said his organization recently purchased 2 new buildings but hadn't begun to operate them as shelters. When the city asked if the nonprofit could open new beds for migrants and asylum seekers, he said the first question was, how is this going to impact our regular homeless population? Okay. The city contracted with DRMM to provide 364 general shelter beds, 144 beds for asylum seekers, and 60 warming center beds through the end of 2022, Roach said. The rest are likely staying with other immigrant families, said Orozco Vasquez. So now the next question is, can we handle it? Let me ask you guys this. Do you all think that they'll be able to handle this? If you guys think that they'll be able to handle this, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't think that they'll be able to handle this, give me a thumbs down. I think this is going to get bad. I think this is going to get bad here faster and in a worse condition than it did in Denver. And we'll be talking about Denver on the next stream. Detroit has seen far fewer people fleeing their home countries than New York and Chicago, and its shelter system seems to be holding up so far. Still, Saar warned local leaders to avoid putting vulnerable communities against each other. The response has to be something better. It's too easy to find a scapegoat, she said. These cities need to focus on making sure there are enough resources for everyone. But now here's the thing. All of the cities, they haven't been able to provide resources for everyone. Bowser said Detroit added 100 beds to its warming centers in November, plus another 94 shelter beds on December 1st. Over the next 6 weeks, officials expect to add another 140 emergency beds with help from the state. Based on our projections, we expect the added 334 warming and shelter beds will be an adequate supplement to our long-term network, Bowser said. We believe we are prepared to handle the demand for emergency shelter, both for Detroiters as well as migrants. As always, We continue to monitor the demand daily and have contingency plans to quickly add additional shelter bed if the needs requires. Okay. Now we've seen how some of those contingency plans have worked. What do those contingency plans look like? How have those contingency plans panned out? Did they do good or did they do bad? The situation could be improved by changes to the federal immigration policy through though any changes seem like a long shot given the current gridlock in Washington, D.C. For instance, local governments wouldn't need to provide as much support for refugees and migrants who are quickly and legally employed. Orozco Vasquez said their clients who find work and leave Freedom House virtually never return to the shelter for housing. Okay. Global migration is expected to intensify. So here's my question for you guys. Can you guys imagine global migration at a higher rate than it already is? Imagine global migration being more intense than it already is. More people coming in faster, getting sent out to more places. Once this influx is addressed, there needs to be a plan in place for future ones as well, said Haig Oshigan, associate professor of communications at Wayne State University and a member of Detroit's City Council's Immigration Task Force. Such planning shouldn't only fall on Detroit. So now here, Detroit is sounding like everybody else, Oshigan said, but also to the state and countries in Southeast Michigan. I'm sorry, the state and counties in Southeast Michigan. But he said conversations about county level cooperation were only beginning to happen. Representatives from Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties didn't respond to requests for comment. Still, Oshagan said Detroit's quick response to the recent influx of migrants gave him hope that the region can be ready for the next one. There's no reason why we can't do it, he said. I'm hoping that all these positive signs actually amount to real change. All right. So now they ask the question, what's next for the newcomers? Nonprofit legal workers have already began helping some refugees and migrants figure out what's next. Most are applying for asylum in the U.S. So now, per that report that we just read, or per that report that we just watched, how many of these people do you guys think are going to be getting approved for asylum? Let me know what you guys think. Most are applying for asylum in the U.S., which means they'll have to convince the U.S. government that they are fleeing an untenable situation at home. The process takes any length between 8 months or more than 2 years, during which time applicants are unable to work legally. If an asylum seeker wants to move away from Detroit during that time, they can transfer their case to another court system. DRMM received funding to keep the new beds for migrants through the end of 2024, though that contract could be extended, Roach said. He said the stays for individual people will be short-term, though the details haven't been worked out with the city. Local officials are bracing for the possibility that more refugees and migrants could reach Detroit in the coming weeks. When the recent cold snap reached Texas, it seemed to slow activity at the border, said Orozco Vasquez. Detroit could see more new arrivals once the weather warms up, she said. So now they asked the question, can Detroiters help? Freedom House is already running low on space for donated materials. Vasquez said it would prefer monetary donations. I bet. SAR said that ABISA and the Haitian Network Group of Detroit are working to meet migrants' basic needs. Both take monetary donations or donations of winter clothes, food, legal services, and transportation. Donations to DRMM or the Homeless Action Network of Detroit support the city's safety net for all unhoused people. Now, if these influxes continue to come in, my question for you guys is, how long do you all think that this will last? That is the question that I have for you guys. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. This It was going to be a short one. We're going to get back to it a little bit later. If you guys are not subscribed to Just Talking with TD and Rob, make sure that you guys subscribe to Just Talking with TD and Rob because we got a good show planned for y'all. I'll probably be back with a couple late night streams. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this. I got some video premieres coming tonight. I'm going to clip up some more videos. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for being here. And as always, ladies and gentlemen,